Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Rajam Yashodanandana Vrajajana Rajam Unatira Panacha Yamunatira Panacha Jayarat Bhatama Kunjabiha Jayarat Bhatama Kunjabiha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Ya Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Vrajajana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Munatira Panacha Unatira Panacha Jayarat Kunjarihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radha Hare Radha Hare Shri Prabhupada 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 Rantarashim Bhagavatam. So, reading from the Lilamrita first, I believe. Is that correct? We're reading from the Lilamrita first, or?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. Okay.
Yes. Let me get the Lilamrita. Anyway. Sorry. It's page 260. Okay. This is chapter entitled Dream Come True. With his passport and sponsorship papers, Bhaktivedanta Swami went to Bombay, not to sell books or raise funds for printing. He wanted a ticket for America. Again, he tried approaching Sumati Morarji. He showed his sponsorship papers to her secretary, Mr. Chokshi, who was very impressed and who went to Mrs. Morarji on his behalf. The Swami from Vrindavan is back, he told her. He has published his book on your donation. He has a sponsor and he wants to go to America. He wants you to send him on the Scindia ship. Mrs. Morarji said no. Swamiji was too old to go to the United States and expect to accomplish anything. As Mr. Chokshi conveyed to him Mrs. Morarji's words, Bhaktivedanta Swami listened disapprovingly. She wanted him to stay in India and complete the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why go to the States? Finish the job here. But Bhaktivedanta Swami was fixed on going. He told Mr. Chokshi that he should convince Mrs. Morarji. He coached Mr. Chokshi on what he should say. I find this gentleman very inspired to go to the States and preach something to the people there. But when he told Mrs. Morarji, she again said no. The Swami was not healthy. It would be too cold there. He might not be able to come back. And she doubted whether he would be able to accomplish much there. People in America were not so cooperative, and they would probably not listen to him. Exasperated with Mr. Chokshi's ineffectiveness, Bhaktivedanta Swami demanded a personal interview. It was granted, and a grey-haired, determined Bhaktivedanta Swami presented his emphatic request. Please give me one ticket. So, finish there. That was 3 paragraphs, I believe. So, now we'll start the Srimad Bhagavatam class. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 23, entitled Maharaj Prithu's Going Back Home. And the text today is text 32. So I'll just read the Sanskrit 3 times and then go to the word for word. Pramano Brahmavaruchas vi Rajanyo Jagati Patihi Vaishya Patan Vit Patisyach Chudra Sattamatam Iyat. Pramano Brahmavaruchas vi Rajanyo Jagati Patihi Vaishya Patan Vit Patisyach Chudra Sattamatam Iyat. Pramano Brahmavaruchas vi Rajanyo Jagati Patihi Vaishya Patan Vit Patisyach Chudra Sattamatam Yat. synonyms. Brahmana, the Brahmanas. Brahmarajasvi, one who has attained the power of spiritual success. Rajanya, the royal order. Jagati Pati, the king of the world. Vaishya, a mercantile class of men. Patan, by reading. Vitpati becomes master of animals. Syat becomes Shudra, the laborer class of men. Satamatam, the position of a great devotee. Iyat attains. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: if one hears of the characteristics of Prithu Maharaj and is a Brahmana, he becomes perfectly qualified with Brahminical powers. If he is a Kshatriya, he becomes a king of the world. If he is a Vaishya, he becomes a master of other Vaishyas and many animals. And if he is a Shudra, he becomes the topmost devotee. Purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that one should become a devotee regardless of one's condition. Whether one is without desire, akama, or with desire, sakama, or whether one desires liberation, moksha kama. He is advised to worship the Supreme Lord and execute devotional service unto him. By so doing, one attains all perfection in any field of life. The process of devotional service, especially hearing and chanting, is so powerful that it can bring a person to the perfectional stage. This verse, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and Shudras are mentioned. But here it should be understood that reference is to the Brahmana, who is born in a Brahminical family. The Kshatriya, who is born in a Kshatriya family, the Vaishya, who is born in a Vaishya family, and the Shudra, who is born in a Shudra family. But whether one is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, he can attain perfection simply by hearing and chanting. To take birth in a family of Brahmanas is not the ultimate finishing touch. One must have the power of a Brahmana, which is called Brahma Tejas. Similarly, taking birth in a royal family is not the all in all. One must possess the power to rule the world. Similarly, taking birth as a Vaishya is not all. One must possess hundreds or thousands of animals, specifically cows, and rule over other Vaishyas as Nanda Maharaj did in Vrindavana. Nanda Maharaj was a Vaishya who possessed 900,000 cows and ruled over many cowherd men and boys. A person who is born in a Shudra family can become greater than a Brahmana simply by accepting devotional service and giving oral reception to the pastimes of the Lord and his devotees. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let's read the translation one more time. If one hears of the characteristics of Prithu Maharaj and is a Brahmana, he becomes perfectly qualified with Brahminical powers. If he's a Kshatriya, he becomes a king of the world. If he is a Vaishya, he becomes a master of other Vaishyas and many animals. And if he is a Kshudra, he becomes the topmost devotee. So thank you, Shama Mataji, for allowing me to speak today on Srimad Bhagavatam. And again, like last time, I acknowledge that many of you are much more senior to me in terms of spiritual advancement. So hopefully we can seek your blessings in order to say something that's appropriate. So with regards to this particular verse, it's within a section by which Shukadev Goswami is stating all the various benedictions that one attains by reading this particular pastime, the history of Prithu Maharaj. So in this one here, we're hearing how all the various castes, the Varnas, they receive their own respective benedictions from reading this pastime. And in the next verse as well, another benediction is given. And that's whether one is a man or a woman, someone hears this pastime with great respect, they'll become a parent of many children, if without children, and will become the richest if without money. So this is the Palashruti awarded for someone who hears this pastime. There's more that follows. With regard to this particular verse, again, we're hearing about how different castes get different benedictions. And specifically in the purport, Prabhupada goes into detail as to, regardless of motive or material background, i.e. caste, anyone who hears and chants the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they can reach the ultimate perfection in life. So if we look at this purport part by part, the purport opens by referring to the verse in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in this way, he talks about the three types of individuals who may come to Krishna consciousness. So you have those who are akama, so the rarest of all the devotees who take to the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, simply for the Lord's satisfaction. Then you have those who are sakama, those who have material desires. And then you have those who are moksha kama, those who have the desire for personal liberation. So those who are sakama or savakama, as the verse in the second canto says, they're said to have unlimited desires. And those who fit into that category are the karmis. The moksha kama individuals, they are those who desire liberation, obviously referring to the jnanis. And also there's reference made to the siddhas, those who desire perfection, mystic perfections, to be able to perform magic tricks, as Prabhupada puts it in some places. So regardless of for what reason you may have for existing in this world, what desires you may have, it's recommended that you should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Whole. The reason being, if you're a kami, then we know that generally kamis worship the demigods, but who is the ultimate awarder of the benedictions that the kamis seek? Who is the one who sanctions what the demigods are able to give? It's Krishna himself. And similarly, Krishna is actually the awarder of liberation for the impersonalists, the jnanis. So therefore, regardless of your motive in this world, worshipping him is probably the smartest thing to do. As he explains that if someone worships the Supreme Personality of God, it actually, these things like impersonal liberation and the rewards of a person's fruitive acts, they're just naturally byproducts. The verse is given, Bhaktis Taish Tiratara Bhagavan Yadisya, Daivena Naf Palati Divya Kishora Murti, Mukti Swayam Mukulitanjali Sevate Sman, Paramata Kama Gataya Samaya. So this verse, it states, "Oh my Lord, if one engages in your pure devotional service with determination, you become visible in your original transcendental youthful form as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as liberation is concerned, she stands before the devotee with folded hands, waiting to render service. As well as that, religion, economic development, and sense gratification are all automatically attained without separate endeavor. So again, more evidence to the claim that simply by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one attains all benedictions. One can fulfill all desires. We have the example in the Srimad Bhagavatam, also the 4th canto of Dhruva Maharaj, who had very lofty material desires that he wanted fulfilled. And he approached the Supreme Personality of God for fulfillment, as we know. Dhruva Maharaj, after being insulted by his stepmother, he went crying to his real mother, and he had the desire in his heart for revenge against his stepmother, against his father for neglecting him. And his mother explained that she couldn't do anything to help the situation. If he wanted his desires to be fulfilled, then he should approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worship him. So in the course of searching out the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the forests, he came across Narada Muni. And Narada Muni obviously inquired, asked him what he was doing in the forest, being so young. And Dhruva Maharaj explained that out of seeking revenge for his being insulted, he was wanting to acquire a kingdom larger than his father's, and also larger than that of even his grandfather, Lord Brahma. And Narada Muni, in the end, he gave him advice about how he could do so by performing the 8-fold yoga process. And in doing so, he would be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And fast forwarding to the end of that particular pastime, that history, we see in the end, after performing so many austerities, penances, he finally attained the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in doing so, he realized that all his desires, everything that he had worked so hard for, were actually meaningless and very immature. So it's stated in the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya that Dhruva Maharaj, he exclaimed, "My dear Lord, I practiced austerities and penances because I was desiring to receive something from you. And in exchange, you have allowed me to see you, who are never visible even to the great sages and saintly persons. I'd been searching out some pieces of broken glass, but instead I have now found the most valuable jewel. I'm therefore satisfied, my Lord, and I do not wish to ask anything more from your Lordship." So we see that Dhruva Maharaj, after that, he achieved what he desired. He achieved the kingdom of Dhruva Loka, which is exempt from being annihilated at the end of the cosmic annihilation, as well as that he got to rule the world with full sensory capacity for 36,000 years. He got what he wanted, what he desired materially. But in the end, he realized when he received the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in light of that, everything that he wanted was actually worthless. So I was thinking about how, as aspiring devotees, we may come to the Lord, come to Supreme Personality of Godhead, devotional service, Krishna consciousness, with so many material desires, but it's by his mercy that we get what we want at all. But through doing so, through coming with desires, and through simultaneously hearing, chanting, performing devotional service, we can become purified, and ultimately he gives us what we need, which is actually devotional service. So he not only gives us what we want, he also gives us what we need in the ultimate scheme of things. And thinking about it, I was thinking, how merciful is that? How liberal is that? You know? Actually, the material desires that we maintain, that we have, actually, they're extremely trivial from the ultimate perspective. They're actually completely superfluous to our existence because, as is quite common and popular to say in pseudo-spiritual scenes here in the West, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So ultimately, what does a spiritual being have to do with this material world? Our only involvement comes from identifying with the temporary body, of which we are not. So yeah, within this material world, within this lifetime and previous lifetimes, we carried so many material desires. We pursued so many of these desires for wealth, typically acknowledgement, attention, fame, in other words. In this life, we may pursue position. I want to be a big lawyer. I want to have my own law firm. I want to be an accountant, have my own accounting firm. I want to be an engineer. Nice house, well-behaved kids, so on and so forth. But in the course of our existence, as living beings, living entities, due to being so small, due to being overwhelmed by Maya, the material illusory energy, we forget that we can't actually take any of this beyond this life with us. So, yeah, people, I observe within myself, obviously, and just my day-to-day interactions with people through preaching and other things that I have to do. People get so into this temporary lifetime, and whatever they're into, whether it be as a university student, whether it be as a working person. I remember myself, actually, because I studied chemical materials engineering at the University of Auckland. I first of all decided to study that degree because I thought it would make money. I didn't want to study really, but how no alternative pathway in life. What I really wanted actually was to actually become a monk, but there was no way with the people that I knew that I could actually pursue that pathway. So everyone else in my high school was going to university at the time, so I just went to university too. I just conformed to the mainstream paradigm. In any case, because I had some spiritual inclination, some interest, I began to look into Buddhism and stuff like this. And we hear about the concepts of impermanence, how this whole world is impermanent, and actually it's an illusion. Ultimately, they have a concept of Maya as well. And by the end of it all, I reached a point where I thought, like, what am I actually even doing any of this for? I'm not going to be able to take this qualification with me beyond death. And it's not as if it's very like glorious. I'm not really impacting the world in any amazing way. In any case, who's going to remember me, for being an engineer? No one. No one's going to care. And ultimately, again, I don't know who I am, but I know that I'm not of this world, and that therefore anything that I do, material acquisition, it's really superfluous. It's trivial. So I graduated, and I remember just holding the piece of paper in my hand after graduation. I was tempted to just throw it in the bin. But I didn't, because my parents at the time would have been very angry. So I kept it, but I lost it in the end. So anyway, it's on record online in any case. But yeah, the point being, no one remembers what you achieve, and no one really cares what you achieve in this world after this life. Maybe some for like at least a couple decades, but after a while you're just forgotten, swept away by the waves of time. So therefore, there's a statement by Radhanath Swami that I read recently, very relevant. He says, if we take joy in our own greatness, it will be washed away with the waves of time. But if we take pleasure in God's greatness, we dive into an ocean of spiritual joy. And actually, if we're looking for fame and acknowledgement within this world, Prabhupada says in the purport of the Bhagavad Gita, he says that real fame actually is to be known as a devotee. And one who does not have such fame is actually infamous. So that statement struck me quite a bit because, before I became a devotee, even now, admittedly, there is a desire for fame, adoration, distinction, all these sorts of things. There's some sort of acknowledgement. But again, we want to acknowledge the glories of the Lord. Actually, that is the only thing that we can take with us. Our appreciation, our acknowledgement, the glorification of the Lord that we perform in this life, the service based around hearing and chanting, all of this is the thing that actually stays with us to our eternal credit. So even if we do have desires in this material world, it's admittedly, it's going to happen. It's not as if by hearing, the Bhagavatam once, by hearing these statements once, that we're going to be able to give up our material desires. They have to be purified in some way, shape, or form. So admittedly, when I'm preaching to myself and when I'm preaching, through outreach, and I meet so many people come up with I guess, an excuse you could call it, that they can't practice Krishna consciousness, or they don't want to practice Krishna consciousness now because they have things that they want to do. I remember saying that to devotees at a certain point in my life, after knowing them for a short amount of time, that, I've got desires that I want to fulfill. I've got places I want to go in this life. Some people even go as far as saying, look, yeah, I like Krishna consciousness. I like the philosophy, but I want a little bit of Maya. I want to dabble with Maya for a little bit longer. And on the side, a little bit of Krishna too. So generally the responses that I would give to people, specifically preaching to people in the West, but sometimes they are coming from India as well. We just say, look, it's fine. Just add a little bit of Krishna to your life. Just chant a little bit of Hare Krishna. Read the books and, you'll be happy. Little do they know, if they keep doing that, actually, they might end up like me, just giving everything up and living in the brahmacharya ashram. But, we don't tell them that. But sometimes if people are a little bit more stubborn, you see they've got potential, but they're a little bit more stubborn, then you can be a little bit heavy and or direct, and you can say, look, for example, so you want to work a job and make money? Easy, just become a spiritual accountant, a spiritual salesman. Just give a little bit of your money for, spirit. There, you can have your cake and eat it too. Or you want a partner? Well, guess what? There's plenty of opportunities in Krishna consciousness. You can become partners in enlightenment, actually have a relationship that has meaning. Some people even say, I want intoxication, I want to be able to, use psychedelics and get high. So obviously, in the past, Prabhupada, he once held a festival called Stay High Forever. And naturally, since I've been a devotee, I never really dabbled with intoxication, but I can imagine that the feeling somewhat resembles, and I say this, very lightly, somewhat resembles how you might feel after having some good prasad or kirtan. But obviously, the experience you get from prasad and kirtan is much better, by far. So if a person wants intoxication, come to one of our events and, get intoxicated off the prasad and the kirtan. You can become a sannyasi and you'll have to travel to so many places that you'll never want to travel again. You want to join the army, become a brahmachari. You want to eat meat, try some curd steak. You want to explore other spiritual paths, start with this one and see how it works for you. Actually, my spiritual master, when I was in this position, making so many excuses to him for taking to the practice, I said, I knew that Krishna consciousness was the real deal. And I knew that by taking to Krishna consciousness, my life will change. I have to give up mostly everything. I'd read enough of the books to get that. But I was trying to find a way out. So I was making some excuses to him, one in a darshan, So I said to him, look, the reality is there are so many spiritual paths out there, Buddhism, Hindu, other, Hindu sects are out there. And, Islam too. There's so many spiritual paths that I just don't know much about. So I feel that I need to go to these places where these spiritual paths come from and, just compare how and see how they match up with Krishna consciousness. In fact, I don't know much about anything. So he said, look, you're here now, you're at the loft. Why spend so much money traveling to other places? Why not just explore Krishna consciousness just a little bit more and see how you go with that? Save your money. And I thought, true, I can't really argue with that. I'll give it a try. But then I started chanting a little bit more. And then I started chanting a little bit more. And then reading a little bit more. And then by the mercy of the devotees, I didn't end up traveling. I stayed here. And yeah, that was that for my travel plans. So in any case, the point being, regardless of your motive, anyone can actually not only achieve their material desires if Krishna wills it, but also by worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they can actually achieve the ultimate benediction, which is you can receive Krishna himself in your life through devotional service. You want to see Krishna, just look at how much devotional service you have in your life. That is Krishna manifesting, his grace manifesting in your life. So quickly touching on the second part of the purport, Prabhupada also goes to make the point that regardless of caste, also, one can also become perfect. So the first part of the purport touches on the idea that regardless of your motive, you can become perfect by hearing and chanting. Similarly, regardless of caste, by coming to Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting, performing devotional service, one can also become perfect. So as we hear, Chaturvanya Maishashtam Gunakama Vibhaga Shaha, there are 4 divisions of human society, as stated in the verse, also the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. And they're divided according to their guna, their qualities, and their karma, the work that they perform. So Prabhupada, he explains that this verse in particular, when it's saying that, the Brahmanas, they get this, the Kshatriyas, they get that, the Vaishyas get this, he explains that actually this is referring to those who are actually born in the family of their respective castes. So it was assumed, that if a person has Brahmin appearance in Vedic culture, then leading up to conception, they would, through their consciousness, attract a Brahminical soul to the womb. And the same thing with those who are Kshatriyas, they would, at the point of conception, be attracting a soul with the inclinations of a Kshatriya. And then when they were born, that individual was also trained accordingly to perform the prescribed duties of their particular caste. But however, that may not always be the case. It may be found that those born in a particular family don't actually display the qualities, nor can actually perform the work. So, due to this phenomenon, we have a situation in India today, mainly, where those who are born in Brahmin families, they claim caste by birthright. So simply by being born in a Brahmana family, one claims to be a Brahmana. And actually, Prabhupada has said in a lecture that I heard recently that this phenomenon has actually destroyed Vedic culture within India. And it's true. Of course, not being born in India, I wasn't so familiar with this phenomenon. But after doing a little bit of preaching, you begin to meet many people who claim to be born in Brahmin families. I remember having one friend who is from Punjab, but he was Hindu. His name was Prince. He was the prince of the Brahmanas. But he, he was a very nice boy, very cultured. And, whenever I'd greet him, he'd always greet me by saying Radhe Radhe, give me so many gifts as well, Krishna conscious paraphernalia, paintings of Krishna and, little murtis of Krishna and so on and so forth. And I was thinking, wow, this is a very nice boy. And he told me that he was from a Brahmin family. So I was like, wow, this is the, some of the remnants of Vedic culture still do exist today. And, one day I happened to be doing some social media work for my university outreach program that I do. And it just so happened that I saw his particular outreach page, not his outreach page, his Instagram profile picture. And I saw his name, I was like, oh, okay. And I looked closer at the photo, and I was thinking, hey, that looks interesting. What's going on there? That doesn't look like the temple. And then I went to open his profile page, and he had a story posted up. I clicked on the story just to see what he was up to. And basically, it was the inside of one of the clubs that me and my friends used to go to before I was a devotee. And yeah, he was there, at the bar and so on and so forth. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I called him up and I asked him, oh, what were you doing on Saturday? He said, oh, I probably was doing some worship at the temple. And I said, oh, interesting looking temple. I didn't say any more because I didn't want to feel bad. But in any case, this is common, I've also met some people who have, dabbled with devotional service, and they read about, what it means to be a kshatriya. To be a kshatriya it's much deeper than just being a warrior, just like a warrior with big muscles. But a lot of men that I know seem to get the conception that, being a kshatriya means having big muscles. So there have been instances where some of my devotee friends, they start going to the gym and they get really, really big, really muscular. And then, it goes to their head and they begin to think that they're actually kshatriyas, In any case, Narada Muni, he dispels this misconception. He says that, yasya yal lakshanam proktam pungso varna pivyanjikam yad anyatrapi darsheta tat tainaiva vinirati. If one shows the symptoms of being a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, as described above, even if he has appeared in a different class, he should be accepted according to those symptoms of classification. So instead of considering oneself as a Brahmana by birthright, we rather consider a person a Brahmana by qualities. And this is how traditional Varnashram functioned, as opposed to what exists in India now, Asuri Varnashram, where, as Chaitanya Charan says, birthright made it wrong. By claiming Brahmanism by birthright, actually the whole social order gets messed up. The way things should work are destroyed. So ideally, Varnashram should not just be within the realms of traditional Varnashram, but actually should be taken a step higher to Daivi Varnashram, the ideal where everyone is actually performing their work for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, as it's also stated in the Bhagavatam, Atapumbir Dvijashreshta Varnashrama Vibhagashaha. Chanushti Dharmasha Sangsari Haritoshanam. So the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties that are prescribed to them, according to their own occupation and caste, is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So actually, this is the perfection of Varnashram Dharma. Whereas progression, towards Krishna consciousness would have been very gradual and slow in traditional Varnashram. You're born a Shudra, perform your prescribed duties perfectly. You may take birth as a Vaishya, and then by performing the prescribed duties perfectly, you go to a Kshatriya, Brahmana, so on and so forth. Daivi Varnashram engages one completely in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. which is again based on, surrounded and centered on the process of hearing and chanting. So the last thing that I wanted to share was the power of hearing and chanting, which Prabhupada emphasizes alongside these other points. The power of hearing and chanting and be able to attain perfection. So there's this pastime that I heard in the Gita Mahatmya. It was based around the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and the glories of that chapter. And in the Gita Mahatmya, it states this pastime of Shusharma, who was a Brahmana. He was born in a Brahmana family, but he, like a lot of the Brahmanas, so-called Brahmanas today, his Brahmanism was merely by birthright. It wasn't actually warranted. He had no Vedic knowledge, and he actually displayed a lot of envy within his life. Took pleasure from hurting others, never performed any pious activities, and for his livelihood, he collected leaves, sold them in the bazaar, and used most of his earnings on drinking wine and eating flesh. So it was said that one day, while he was collecting leaves in the gardens of a particular sage, a snake came and bit him, and then he died. And after his death, he was actually cast into many hells, where he suffered for a very long time. But eventually, he came out of the hellish situation that he was in, and he attained the body of a bull. And that bull was then purchased by a crippled man. So this crippled man would just engage the bull in his service, making him work very hard. So for years, he was doing that, putting very heavy loads on the bull's back, which the bull had to carry. And one day, the crippled man, he put an extremely heavy load on the bull's back. And while he was forcing the bull to walk along with that load, it was too much. So the bull actually fainted. So then within the village, people saw what happened, and they saw that this bull was just lying on the ground, and it was completely emaciated. And so there was one pious man apparently who decided to give some of his pious credits to the bull, feeling sorry for the bull. And other villagers saw what was happening, and they also gave their pious credits. And one particular villager, she happened to be a prostitute. She was standing in the crowd, and she didn't know whether she herself had performed any pious credits, but she decided to give some pious credits to the bull. Also, so actually the bull died shortly after, and it was taken to the abode of Yamaraj, the god of death. And when Yamaraj was speaking to this bull, he explained that actually due to all the pious credits you were given by the prostitute, you've now become free from all your sinful reactions. So after that, the bull, who was originally a Brahmana, then took birth in another Brahmana family. And in that birth, he was able to remember his past lives. So he decided to search out the prostitute who had basically saved him from that hellish situation. And he met her, and he found her, and he asked her, what were the pious activities that you performed to be able to free me from that situation? So the prostitute, she explained that in this cage that I have a parrot, and this parrot recites something every day. And by hearing that recitation, her heart had become pure. And she explained how previously she was a Brahmana also. And due to pride, she used to insult learned persons, and she died, suffered in hell, and she attained the body of a parrot. Oh, sorry, this is the parrot speaking. The parrot was there, and it explained his situation. So he was a Brahmana. He, was very jealous, very sinful. He died and suffered for a long time, and then became a parrot. So because of his past sinful activities, his mother and father, they died also when he was a baby. So he was left to die himself, but some rishis ended up saving him. And they took him to their ashram and put him in a cage. And while he was in the cage, he would hear the children of the rishis learning the recitation of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And hearing them, he started to repeat the shlokas. And then shortly after he learned the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, a thief stole him from that place and sold him to the prostitute. So therefore, it was said that by reciting the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that parrot had become completely pure. And by hearing that recitation, that prostitute had also become completely pure. So by receiving some of her pious credits, the result of hearing the first chapter of the Gita, Sushama also became completely pure. And then eventually he attained Vaikuntha. So when I heard that, I thought, what more is there to say? If as a devotee, if you hear an instance like that, how can you not appreciate the glories of, hearing and chanting? Even practically speaking, just looking at how far I've come from where I was to where I am now, being in the brahmacharya ashram, it's like, I can only say that it's due to the mercy of my spiritual master and the potency of hearing and chanting, that I'm able to be at Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's mercy. It's like, I was very far from becoming a brahmachari, I can say that much, In fact, I was very much a vyabhichari, just a sense enjoyer. But yeah, these pastimes, these accounts, they give us faith in the process of hearing and chanting. And, again, we can experience in our own lives how there's such potency in the process as well. So to conclude, regardless of motive, Prabhupada explains that a person can become perfect by hearing and chanting, and regardless of caste, same thing, you can also become perfect by hearing and chanting. If you're the lowest of the lows, as most of us are, being born in Kali Yuga, you can still receive the highest perfection in life. So I'll finish there. Sorry if I went over time, but yeah, did anyone have any comments or questions, reflections to share?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranams.
Such a beautiful class in the morning, explaining the text so nicely, systematically with the examples of Akama, Shakama and Mokshakama, with the examples of Dhruva Maharaj and your personal experience. Really it is enlightening and it gives the right approach, how we understand the three tribes. And the second part is not a question of birthright, it is question of elevation to the standard of a Brahman, whatever status you are. And that is how it is showing us the Falashruti. So Falashruti is the example, live example is our Prithu Maharaj. And from there we can learn whatever the state we are in our occupational status, doesn't matter. We remain at that same status, but we can elevate ourselves by making the credit check to the highest level. And that credit check is none other than hearing and chanting the holy name of the Lord and his pure devotee like Prithu Maharaj. That's why Prithu Maharaj is so important in our lives to understand how to make our credit check to the highest possible. And Prabhupada has given us every single opportunity to make our life so meaningful. And the only thing, we have to get attached to Krishna consciousness. We have to qualify ourselves through these examples, and that will help us to progress in our spiritual advancement. And that's all from me. Thank you so much for enlightening this small text, but very, very powerful to understand how these live examples are very useful in our life. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Dandot Pranam. Thank you so much for your wonderful class and sharing your realizations as well as your personal life experiences as well. It was really inspiring to hear that. Prabhu, I just had a question in this regard. So yeah, definitely, as you said, you emphasize the importance of purity and austerity and sticking to the principles and Krishna consciousness. So, but in terms of the Krishna consciousness overall in society, in the larger larger picture, I was just wondering whether there would be like a gradation of Krishna consciousness, like at the core you have the brahmacharis and the sannyasis, the like who are I should say 100% pure in Krishna consciousness, and surrounding that you have different layers of I should say lessening purity of Krishna consciousness. So is there a consideration that should be tolerated somehow, that kind of reducing as we go, so that Krishna consciousness spreads, even though it may not be 100% pure, it spreads. And that's just a thought. I'm not sure whether I made my question clear. So just wanted a view on that, Prabhu. Yeah.
So are you saying that
different gradations? Yeah.
So yeah, are you, just to confirm, I understand.
Yeah.
Are you saying that as Krishna consciousness spreads and more people come within the society of Krishna consciousness, that naturally we'll see different gradations? And you're asking if
different gradations? Yeah. It may not be 100%. Like there's definitely what is 100% Krishna consciousness, the 4 regulative principles, chanting rounds and following all the principles perfectly. Then around that would there be like different layers of society, which would be at different levels of Krishna consciousness. The Krishna consciousness, yes, devotees, so to speak, but
they're not strict.
is that something to be tolerated or encouraged? That kind of thing. Yeah. Just wanted a view on that. Yeah.
It's a good question. I'll try my best to give some answer. So I was thinking, actually, I feel like even in the Society of Krishna Consciousness now, my limited experience in New Zealand and traveling to Mayapur and Vrindavan, even now that phenomenon exists, that you are different gradations of devotees. Yeah, that you have the sannyasis who ideally are, upholding the highest standard. The brahmacharis, I think it's arguable whether I would say that I'm pure, completely pure, but I'm trying to be more pure. But you have them upholding the highest standards, and then further down you have those who are maybe, I guess, more, not necessarily more involved in the world, because you have a lot of grihastas who are responsible, they're involved in the world, but they're also very Krishna conscious. Like many of them more Krishna conscious than me. But those who are maybe more inclined toward the world, I would say, and they're maybe not utilizing whatever time they could use completely for Krishna conscious activities. And then you further down, even now you have those who are like what we call friends of Krishna, at least in outreach. At the loft we have these people, it's obvious they like devotional service, they like devotees, they like everything, but they're just friends of Krishna, and their progress is either very slow or it's stagnant, and they won't make much more progress in this life. But so with them, and then even further, you may even have what you call the fringies, those who are just very fringe. They come like here and there, and associate with devotees here and there. But with those 2 categories, at least in the course of their preaching work that I do, we are very tolerant and understanding of their situation. Not everybody is at the same point in their level of progress, in Krishna consciousness. And my spiritual master, he says, like, when I asked a similar question to him, he says, you never know, you might have been in their position in your past life, and now it just so happens you're taking up the practice seriously now. It's even still possible that I could die and not go back to God, yet I could take another birth and then become lax in my next life. and just cruise off the devotional credit that I've acquired from this life. In any case, we are very accepting and understanding and empathetic towards these people. And at least for myself, I see that they can still do a lot of devotional service. They can still further Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, simply by maintaining that friendship, maintaining that good relationship, and having them, just within the community. They've got skills that they can bring. They've got money and resources that they can bring, and that they can engage in Krishna service. So I would then say that it's definitely important to have a core group of devotees who are very serious in their practice, who uphold the ideal standard. But naturally, as Krishna consciousness spreads, as you were saying, we will see those gradations. But actually within those gradations, the lower gradations, those people can still actually contribute to the Sankirtan movement and inspire others to also join. I've had many instances on book distribution where I've met people and brought them along to Krishna consciousness, tried to help them develop their Krishna consciousness, and they haven't gone very far. But then they bring a friend, one day out of nowhere, and then that friend that they bring actually becomes more serious than them. So actually, while they may not have done much, they were just like a middleman, a link for the next person who actually was to become more serious, to actually come along and then take up the practice. So when I think about it, I see a lot of possibilities, the possibilities that come up as we expand the Krishna conscious movement. Yes, we'll have varying gradations of levels of devotees, but actually their presentation of Krishna consciousness and the way they live Krishna consciousness within their own lives, although it may not be the ideal, actually it may appeal to some at a particular point in time, and those people who it appeals to then can come to Krishna consciousness, and they themselves, they may find that they are then attracted to the higher standards. So for me, it's like the more the better. But that I've been known to be quite liberal in my outreach efforts. So other devotees might say something different. Others might say, in order to preserve the purity, just keep a few devotees and don't get too big. But ultimately, Lord Chaitanya, he said that he wants Krishna consciousness to spread all over the universe. And if that's his will, it's going to happen some way, somehow. I guess we just have to, by his grace, acquire the intelligence, the skills, and the means to be able to manage that properly, so that Krishna consciousness and its purity is preserved. Sorry, that might have been a long-winded answer, but did I answer your question?
Thank you. No, yes, Prabhu, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your views on that. No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Would it be time to finish there, or does anyone else have anything to?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, yes, there seems there are not much any other person to make comments on that.
Yeah.
So thank you for the very nice class, and hope to see you again in our Bhagavatam class. And Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha
Namo Namaha Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Is Manobhiram
Prabhu ki
Jai. All Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.